So now what we need to do is divide that number of rounds into the 3 sections that we talked about at the beginning of the lesson. The first section is the cuff, which is going to be a certain number of rounds. The second section is the increase section, which can be as short or as long as you like. And the third section is the straight section. If you make your increase section really short, then you'll increase a lot of stitches very quickly and you'll end up with a more blousy gathered sleeve. If you make your increase section really long, then you'll end up with fewer increases over a longer distance and you'll end up with more of a tailored, tapered sleeve. So it's really up to you, and you can look at your sketches and at your sample garment to see which kind you think you're going to want. I chose to do my increase section over about half my available rows because I wanted to get up to the full width right around my elbow, because that lets you bend your arm without getting a lot of stretching or tightness in the sweater. But if you're doing a really fancy piece that you want to be really fitted, then you can make this section longer to achieve that effect. I decided then also to do my cuff pattern, which started with a 1x1 rib and then flowed into a ribbing that matches the hem of my sweater for 4 inches, which matches my hem. So if I multiply 4 inches by my number of rounds, 6.875, I get 27.5. So I'll work my cuff pattern for 28 rounds. Now if I take that away from the number of total rounds in my sweater, 144 minus 28, I have 116 rounds left to work with. So when you decide how many rounds you want your increases spaced over, it has to be less than or equal to this number. It can be way less, as in my case, or it can be the same amount if you want a very gradually shaped sleeve. For my increase section, I decided to go with just about half this number of stitches. So I chose 56 rounds for my increase. The trickiest part of this number, which is labeled 7, is that it has to be divisible by the number labeled 4, the number of increase rounds. So 56 divided by 8 gives me 7, and that means that this number is going to work for my increase section. And then finally, the remaining number of rounds to add up to your total is going to be your straight section. And in my case, this was 60. And you can check your math to make sure this number 8 plus this number 7 plus this number 6 should add up to your total, which was labeled 5. And the last step in your calculations, and then I promise we're going to be knitting again really soon, is to figure out the number of plain rounds between your increase rounds. Just as we did with the torso, you're going to work increase rounds separated by a certain number of plain rounds. In order to do this, what we're going to do is take the number of rounds in our increase section, which is 7. In my case, that was 56. Divide it by 4, the number of increase rounds. So for me, that was 8. 56 divided by 8 gives us 7, and that means that there are 7 rounds in each of my increase sections. If I take 1 away from that number, that tells me that I need to work 6 plain rounds in between each increase round. If you've followed along with this and have filled all of these numbers in, you should have 9 key numbers, then you are ready to start knitting your sleeves. What follows in the document is a basic pattern where you fill in the numbers that you worked out. So you cast on the number of stitches that you calculated in step 1. In my case, that was 42. Join to work in the round. Work your cuff pattern over the number of rounds you calculated here for number 6. So I will work them for 28 rounds. Then you get to your increase section. So it will show you how to work 1 increase round. And this is the same for all sizes. And then work this number of rounds plain. In my case, that was 6. And then repeat this, one increase round followed by your number of plain rounds, this number of times, until you've done as many increase rounds as you calculated that you will need. And then finally, for the straight section, you're going to work plain for as many rounds as you determined you needed to for your straight section. In my case, that was 60. And when you're done, you're going to place, just like the torso of your sweater, place all the stitches on waste yarn or an extra circular cable, because we're going to come back to it when we unite all three pieces. The handout for this week contains some suggestions for how to modify your sleeve shaping. For instance, you don't necessarily have to work your increases all in a straight line like we did here. You could work a cuff and then work all the increases in the next row rather than 2 per row, and that would give you a sort of ballooning peasant style sleeve. You could work a cable halfway in the middle of your round that comes up the top of the arm like this and hide your increases on the edges of the cable. Or you could work something like a flared sleeve, where you cast on way more than you need for the cuff and then work decrease rounds until you reach the wrist, and then work the sleeve increases as written. So these are things that you can think about for your first sweater, or if you want to try a simple sleeve like this to get comfortable with the shaping, you'll find that it's really easy to modify sleeves however you like in the future. Good luck working your sleeves and your body. I think that next week we're going to have a little troubleshooting and sharing lesson, and I look forward to seeing what you guys have come up with.